Look at the
I
top
just
of the
don't like
mountain.
what.
Oh my god.
What is up, guys? Phaedo 82 coming at you with another edition of Rust Tactics. This is a series that takes a look at PvP skirmishes using the FreeCam tool on Rust servers, and what we're looking at right now is a large group that has come together here to raid a base. They've done the usual, they've set up a raid base or a forward operating base, and they've sent in an initial raid party here to start pickaxing through a high exterior stone wall, which is going to get them into the inner courtyard where they can start working their way into the main base. The defenders on the inside of the courtyard here are trying to figure out exactly what's going on and how they're best going to be able to defend when that wall comes down. And in Rust, guys, there's nothing more terrifying than hearing multiple players pickaxing through a wall. It's also terrifying hearing C4 and rockets going off, but that sound of multiple players using tools and you know there's numbers out there and their savages are coming for you is a very terrifying experience. But the defenders are not losing their cool. They're in the game here, they're assessing what's going on, and they're really, at this point in time, just figuring out what's going on. They're not despawning their loot, they're still in the fight, they're focused on the game, and that is what is most important and critical. Now, a lot of people have a tendency to get nervous when there's this amount of raiders present at any one location, but they're remaining calm and collected and trying to figure out how to patch up the damage here. I think here what they're trying to do is put up another high exterior stone wall because they broke down a research table that was wedged between those two walls, and I think they want to put down another one once that other wall is just about to fall, which will keep the raiders at bay because that's going to be their primary mode at that point of getting into that inner part of the compound. Now the raiders might have rockets and C4 back at that forward operating base, and right here, guys, this is, notice here what's going on. Above on the ledge of that high exterior stone gateway, one of the defenders here has positioned himself with an M249 light machine gun, the saw, and he has absolutely ripped apart the raid team down there. All those guys who were pickaxing monotonously at that wall have been ripped apart by this one individual with the M249. They tried to defend, they couldn't respond quickly enough. So never underestimate that position when you're raiding a base. The defender up here still has his M249 and he's firing some shots long distance. Notice as well he's tearing stuff up while he has that laser sight attached to that M249. That is said to reduce the recoil of weapons by approximately 30%. I haven't tested that out fully, but if that's the case, the M249 has radically changed this go around. And the defenders have pushed back the initial wave of raiders, but Goblin and his men aren't going to leave anything up to chance, and they're going to leave the base here looking for the forward operating base. And Goblin and his men have made a successful attempt on that forward operating base. He's made his way into the airlock, but he has to be careful here not to get caught in the airlock. One of the members of the raid party was just about to roll up on him. Morgan Freeman there was about to close the door on a Goblin, but Goblin was able to dispatch Morgan Freeman, so he didn't get locked inside the airlock. What's going on right now is they are receiving some flanking fire, but it's not from a group who's allied to either one of the groups who's already at this location. This is Phaedo, Murdoch, and their men, and they're moving in here. Notice they're dropping down the wood walls here, the high exterior wood walls, and what this allows them to do is it's similar to the days in Legacy when we'd throw down the barricades in a firefight and have a place to duck behind and strafe behind, and that's what is essentially the usage of those high wooden walls. They're used quite frequently in PvP battles, and it's just the way it was in Legacy when we were throwing down those wooden barricades and fighting behind them. Now at this point in time, the team that flanked the defenders who were going after the raiders here, Murdoch and Phaedo and their crew, they've come up here and they're not sure really what's going on with this base. They don't know if this is, they know there's a lot of bodies out here, there's a lot of action here, so something's going on here. But they don't know if this is a scrub base, meaning if it's a base that was just constructed recently of new players who don't have a lot of loot. They don't know necessarily on the other side of it, it is a forward operating or a raid base, which is a high value location. So inside this location, you'll notice that these members still have rocket launchers, they still have gear, so there's probably a lot of resources in this position. The raiders that are now in this forward operating base have to think about their options. They can try to raid the base, still raid the base, but they might have to think about getting some of their loot back to their main base because it might be a lost cause at this point. They don't want to lose any more resources. So the point being here is that Phaedo and his crew outside could spend some time here getting into this base. They'd have a hell of a fight on their hands because these members are packing a lot of rocket launchers in here. but it would be a high yield endeavor and a minimal amount of effort. They can get through one wall there and be straight away into that loot room. Forward operating bases, raid bases are constructed on the fly. Typically, they're not very well defended or honeycombed or anything like that. This one in particular is very weak. Some of them will have high exterior walls around them to better fortify them, but so they're kind of like high value bank vaults. If you guys are also legacy players, you'll remember some of the most high yield raids you probably ever had were those little wooden sheds in the game. They were absolutely loaded sometimes because they were just put up to store loot quickly, and if you hit them at the right time, they would be like a little bank vault. And that's what this forward operating base would be for this team. But this team has moved on at this point. They're not going to expend the resources to try to get in there, and they're instead moving out towards that compound that was previously being raided. They're exchanging some fire. Each member here of the raid, or not the raiders, but the team that came in, Phaedo and his group, and then the homeowners there, the defenders, they each have the M249, so they're exchanging some fire going back and forth, each utilizing those laser sights, which is indicating that probably that's been a game changer for the M249 because they haven't seen them used that much on a vanilla Rust server in the wild recently. Outside of base defense, so it's interesting to see players using them. So probably it's a bit of a received a bit of a buff in conjunction with that attachment being the laser sight. Notice again here, guys, that the wooden walls are being used again for those defensive positions. Want to emphasize that. And this defender here, the defender of the raid base, who was previously a raider, he's now scavenging here on the bodies. He was able to find some armor, he was able to find a bolt-action rifle, and this is the effective method of throwing down a sleeping bag and respawning in the fight. You don't have to worry about not coming back entirely geared at that point in time. You can loot bodies when there's chaotic firefights like this going on, re-gear and get back in the fight. That member didn't last too long, though. He was dispatched quickly by Phaedo and Murdoch and their crew. And here at this point, Phaedo, Murdoch, and the crew, they're moving out. They're not going to expend any more resources at this location. They didn't come to raid that base, and they're going to leave that forward operating base with all that good loot in there and move on to other adventures. So guys, again, this is a series that's called Rust Tactics. It focuses on player skirmishes, player interactions, group dynamics, things we can talk about, maybe learn from, see what players are doing and what they could do differently. If you have any insight, any input, please leave comments below, guys. So what are some of the pro tips maybe that we learned from some of the footage here from these skilled players? One is never underestimate this area on top of that gateway. Also, use those wooden walls for positions to be able to hide behind, to be able to hide your movements, and then to be able to, have cover from fire. Also, the M249 is an absolute beast, and don't underestimate that weapon, especially with the laser sight. As always, guys, Phaedo 82, peace.